So we've all been there. You get to the end of that job interview and now it's your turn to do the asking. So today we're sharing interview questions smart women ask. Corporate recruiter Carly Hazen is here with the words for those high pressure moments. And why is that it kind of throws us off? You know, you can get through an entire interview and it kind of throws us off at the end when they say, what questions do you have for me? I mean, I can think of multiple interviews when I think, oh my gosh, I don't have a single question.
I know, and it's so disarming because you're so used to being kind of the passive one in the interview. So once the spotlight gets pushed on you, it does take a moment to kind of gear your thoughts. But I think it's a good thing to be nervous because really we know as the interviewee that any way we answer any question, how casual or no matter how seemingly inconsequential, the way you answer that really can affect whether or not you're invited back for a second interview or ultimately presented with an offer. So it is good to be aware that you should be a little, thought-provoking during that time.
So
even if they just
true.
say something as casual as, tell me about yourself. That's a
true.
real question.
How do you shine in that moment? I mean, how do you take that maybe awkward moment and make it a good moment
Make
for you?
it powerful. I think that first of all, you really want to understand that preparation is the key to any good interview, and you want to make sure that you've prepared in advance some thoughtful, powerful, content-rich questions that you can't just go ahead and find online. So questions such as, so tell me a little bit more about your products and services as a company, or tell me a little bit about, how many locations you have or how many employees. All of that can be found online. Go straight to the heart of what truly matters to you, something about the vision of the company, their corporate leadership, growth potential, a little bit more about the day-to-day responsibilities as defined by that particular interviewer. You want to understand what that job means to you and how you would connect with it on a personal level, as opposed to just the nuts and bolts of the company.
I love that, because I think there is you feel a little silly asking some of those basic questions because we all know that you can find that information online
now. Or check out the LinkedIn profiles of other employees.
Totally. Yeah. So getting a little bit deeper into that, you say that a good idea is to ask about the company environment. How do you say that in a smart way?
So, good question. You would say, please tell me a little bit about the corporate culture of this company as defined by executive leadership. And then also a really thought-provoking question is, can you define the culture of the specific division or the group that I'll be actually working with? Because we all know, and that shows a little bit of insight into the actual corporate workings of most organizations. You have all these little micro cultures throughout the division. The accounting department may be very different than the HR department, may be very different from the front desk where the receptionist sits. So you want to learn about the actual team you're going to be working for, as opposed to just kind of the broad micro level.
And this is so funny because I can see this really throwing them off, and all of a sudden they're the ones in the hot seat and feeling like, oh wow.
Which is a beautiful feeling, and really the more thought-provoking your questions, the more you learn something really interesting that I don't think most people know. The person interviewing you is likely not a professional interviewer, so you don't always need to be a perfect interviewee. The goal is to really find out what matters to you and ask it in a really kind of kind and connective way. But it is a power struggle in a way, because you'll suddenly kind of lift that lid and expose the other person as maybe not knowing the company as well as they should, especially if you're asking the right questions.
Absolutely. It kind of humanizes them, keeps them human.
You got it.
So what are the most important things to keep in mind as we're kind of looking at what questions to ask in those moments?
So understanding the corporate culture, and another really great question is to ask about the ways that companies maybe set themselves apart from other companies in general. And we're not just talking about perks, but other like competitive advantages, ways that their technology products are a little better than the others, maybe things that they offer their employees that are really above and beyond what other companies are offering. And that goes deeper even than employee benefits as far as healthcare and 401k programs. It may be flexible schedules or longer maternity and paternity leaves. It could be a lot of different things. So just asking that question broad, they can take it a number of ways, but understanding how they are different than the marketplace really gives them a chance to shine. And it's interesting to hear how that could maybe affect you as an employee.
It's so interesting. And then you say, and I love this, ask a question that helps you see how they define success.
Yes.
So what is success to them? Because it could be very different in a lot of different environments, right? I mean, if you're at an ad agency versus a big corporate headquarters, success varies.
Exactly. So a great question would be, what traits do you most often see in your successful employees, or even something a little different? I know a lot of business students will ask this. They'll say, taking someone with my similar background and my similar education and kind of trajectory through my educational channels, how did those individuals tend to succeed in this type of organization? Have you hired someone with my, similar background before, and where are they 3 years later and 5 years later and 10 years later? That'll give you a really good vision of how maybe someone with your background may be different than your personality, but at least as far as the hard skills on your resume are concerned, and how maybe they've seen success in that organization as defined by that individual.
And so then how can you show that you have an interest in their growth or success, the company's growth or success? How do you kind of
Great
let
question.
them know?
I think that you can always take a hypothetical and personalize it by giving specific examples on ways that you've succeeded in the past. So you want to actually think to yourself, okay, what are the short and long-term goals of this company, and how have I actually been able to impact that in my prior experience? And maybe you're a new grad and you've only got education to roll on, but maybe you've got 5 or 10 years of experience and you have some really great concrete examples that you can draw from that take it from this hypothetical space into here's how if you hire me, I can actually drive that bottom line and contribute in a very quick manner.
And so using some of the life experience you've had, throwing it into the interview, and that's usually well received on their end.
It is, but you really can't do that effectively unless you've listened very carefully, unless you've understood where they're coming from and asked some very thought-provoking questions, because then they set the stage and they say, here's who we are, here's what we're all about, and then you dive right in with, here's how that connects to me on a very personal level.
I love it, because you're getting the background and then you're throwing yourself in the mix.
You got it.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Carly.